back to Liquid Lunch. We took our jackets off. It's hot in here. And hi, Erin.
Yes,
You're picking up your Tim Hortons coffee, shaking it around.
That's right.
You need more?
It's got hot chocolate in it.
Hot chocolate. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, we got Glenn Allen here, President of Toronto Dollar. Let's have a look at Glenn there. Good old Glenn. Where is he? He's somewhere. There he is.
Missed the clown face. There you go.
There you go.
And we've got
No, I didn't.
Thomas Greco here. Let's have a look at Tom. Great to have you here, Tom.
Good to be back.
So now you're in town, of course. We were all at the Mint Film Festival last night to see the economics of happiness, and we're getting together for dinner tonight. And there's going to be a couple of I don't know, seminars or workshops over the
Yes.
weekend, which are sounding exciting. And what are we going to be talking about?
Well,
Glenn, maybe you can give us an intro.
talk a little bit about. I think Tom will do an introduction around Tom. Let's focus on him because he's in the, in town for 4 days, and we really want to focus on that. But let's just talk quickly. You mentioned the seminars. Maybe Tom, can you tell them what you're going to be talking about at the
Sure.
seminars?
Yeah, tomorrow's seminar will be the nuts and bolts of how to put together a business plan for setting up a local exchange system. And I'll cover the different kinds of models that have been used for community currencies and highlight the model that I think is most powerful in enhancing the local economy and quality of life. So I'll go through the marketing aspects, the financial aspects, implementation strategies, and things of that sort that need to be covered. I think this is probably the most important event of the weekend for people that are interested in actually doing a local exchange system and doing it in a way that can really liberate the community.
Okay, that's a great way to start. There have been a lot of different models. I mean, the Toronto Dollar has one model.
Yes.
I don't know what it has a name, doesn't it? The model that the Toronto Dollar is using.
Yeah, it's a currency that's sold for cash, and in this case, redeemed back into cash at the option of certain holders of the cash. I'm not sure whether it's limited to business owners or whether it's also includes anyone who happens to have Toronto dollars in their possession. I think initially it was only business owners.
Well, it's interesting because there are a number of different models. There's been a lot of people experimenting with different alternative currency.
Mm-hmm.
The LET system is a good example of one.
Right.
Time dollars
Right.
and others. And people have learned, there's pros and cons, I guess, to these various systems. And everyone's
Right.
sort of hopefully learning from the experiences of everybody.
Right. Well, the biggest advantage of the Toronto dollar model, where it's sold for cash and redeemed for cash, is that there's no risk involved to the holder of the currency, because they can convert it back into Canadian dollars at a slight discount. But if they were to continue to circulate it with the merchants, they could get full value for it. So that's the greatest strength of a Toronto dollar kind of currency, is that it's a no-brainer. It's no risk to the merchant. On the other hand, it keeps us tied to conventional money, to official money, and we have to find some way to extend the model so that we monetize the local value added. And what that means is issuing the currency on the basis of the credit of local producers. So they spend it into circulation instead of sell it into circulation, and then agree to redeem it in goods and services. So there's no official money involved in that process. Another way that a currency can be issued is by a rebate. It seems like Canadian Tire money is well known by everybody in Canada, and this is basically a rebate certificate. When you buy something at Canadian Tire, you get a small amount back for use on your next purchase or some subsequent purchase. These rebate programs have become very popular, and they are useful in promoting loyalty, consumer loyalty. And frequent flyer miles are the same kind of thing. They're rebates given by the airline that can be used to book a subsequent flight. So you have basically those three ways of issuing currency: sell it into circulation, spend it into circulation, or give it as a rebate.
all of them are different than the regular money system, which is a debt-based.
Yeah, the regular money system is centrally controlled, and it's basically a monopolized system of credit control. And it's backed up by the legal system with legal tender laws, and that require people to accept the currency, no matter whether it's being well managed or poorly managed. And universally, political currencies have been poorly managed, some worse than others. And we've had a number of historical examples of drastic abuse, which creates hyperinflationary situations. One case that I write about in my last book, The End of Money and the Future of Civilization, was the case of the Weimar Republic between 1921 and 1923, where there was a hyperinflation of the German mark. And that's a very interesting case to study because it clearly outlines the hazards involved in the abuse of a currency issuance.
Yeah, somebody was in here not too long ago. They had I think it was a Zimbabwe $1 trillion note.
Yes, Zimbabwe is a contemporary example of hyperinflation and massive abuse of the currency by the banking authorities.
Now, people are talking about what's happening with the U.S. Dollar, and I think last night you showed a PowerPoint slide where the total U.S. debt is $47 trillion.
Overall, total debt for all sectors of the economy, government, business, financial, and personal, it's over $50 trillion. But the main thing that I pointed out was the exponential growth.
Yeah.
That it's the famous hockey stick curve that Al Gore made famous in his movie The Inconvenient Truth. So we're seeing that happen with debt across the board, exponential growth in debt. And I compared it to the growth of GDP, which is a measure of the total economic output. And debt is growing much faster than GDP. So there has to be a reason for that. And to me, the reason is obvious. It's the fact that money today is created by banks making loans at interest.
Compound interest.
And compound interest is the exponential function that drives everything else.
Now, I don't get it because we have a lot of very well-paid economists and central bank managers and International Monetary Fund people working on all this, and it just seems so obvious that there's a problem with the system based on money as debt and compound interest, and yet, which is, we know, if anybody with any sense at all just looks at what is causing the chaos in the world financial system today, that this is really the root cause, and yet none of these people seem to want to even begin to address the real problem.
Well, it's become a religious belief that growth is the way that you move forward with the economy and improve quality of life. But growth works for a few, but not for the many, and it certainly doesn't work for the planet. You cannot have continuous exponential growth on a finite planet. Eventually you reach the physical limits, and we're pretty much at that point. And that's why we're seeing the breakdown of institutions. Alvin Toffler wrote 30 years ago in his book, The Third Wave, about the fact that we are moving out of the industrial civilization into a third wave civilization. Now, he didn't say a whole lot about what it's going to look like or what the process of transition is going to look like. He did say a few things about the political shifts that need to take place, but he didn't talk about the economic or the financial in any great degree. And that's the primary focus of my work, is on the economic and financial. And what we have to do is transcend this debt money system that has this built-in growth imperative. Now, most economists, conventional academic economists, take the money system for granted. They take it as a given, that it has evolved over a period of 300 years, and it's the only possible way to do money. But, you know, there used to be a lot of prohibitions against compound interest. They called it usury in the old days, but you hardly ever hear that word anymore because it's pejorative, and people don't like to be linked to the practice of usury, which has a history of being censured by both, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all have prohibitions in their laws against the practice. And what we've done in the last several hundred years is make it the foundation of our monetary and financial system. And so we're reaping the whirlwind, so to speak, because of that. So what we have to do is, in rebuilding or reinventing money and banking, we have to transcend that debt growth imperative. We have to create money on a different basis. And we can do that outside the banking system by doing direct credit clearing amongst traders. Instead of using conventional money, we basically just debit and credit one another in our associated circles of trading.
So how will this be received though? Like, let's say Toronto dollar right now, it's in effect, and as it evolves and it catches on further, how is this going to be received by the banks and the government? What are some of the challenges that you see, or how would you deal with it?
Well, the banking establishment has historically resisted and tried to undermine anything that they saw as a competing system. You can see this historically in my first two, my second and third books. I wrote about the cases of Vorgel in Austria and Schwanenkirchen in Bavaria during the Great Depression. These were places where they actually established local currencies in order to supplement the scarce official currency that was the case during the Great Depression. And they functioned very well and helped those communities to pull out of the economic slump. But the central banks and the governments eventually shut them down because they saw them as competition. Now, there is that possibility that always exists, and we saw in a recent case in the United States with the Liberty Dollar that was shut down, and the Liberty Dollar principal was convicted of counterfeiting. And there was obviously no attempt to counterfeit. In fact, he was trying to produce silver dollars or silver coins that would be circulating hand to hand in lieu of conventional money. A silver dollar, of course, has value inherent in itself. People value silver just because of what it is. It's not a physical representation of something outside of the silver. And but they convicted him anyway of trying to counterfeit U.S. currency. So I don't think that was really much of a threat to the system, but they still came against him. I think what we have today with the internet and the information technologies that are available to us, the opportunity to do this on a virtual basis, which there is no possibility of anybody confusing these virtual credit units with a national currency. And Friedrich Hayek, a long time ago, predicted that competition in currency would arise in this way, with a ledger system rather than physical notes. Now, we can use physical notes or vouchers as an adjunct to a ledger system, and that has been done.
Okay.
So it's going to be just like on Star Trek.
I'm not enough of a Trekkie to know what they were doing.
We should watch some Star Trek when you're here.
It can answer everything.
Hey, what do they do? You never see them paying for anything on Star
Exactly.
Trek. What's going on?
Exactly.
I just realized that. Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay,
Amazing.
so the Liberty Dollar thing is one example. I mean, the U.S. We've seen again a chart you showed last night where the amount of money that the U.S. government has to borrow in the last 5 years has just gone totally through the roof to pay for the wars and all that kind of thing.
Not only the wars, but to bail out the banks that created the problem in the first place.
Exactly.
Their objective is to keep the system going as it exists.
Right.
Because basically it's the bankers that run the government,
Yeah.
People don't want to admit that, but that's the truth.
Well, so we have a situation where a lot of people are talking about that this is going to lead to potentially a great inflation, maybe
Sure.
even hyperinflation in the United States, which will cause the dollar to crash, which will cause all kinds of turmoil in the U.S. Our last guest was speaking about how China is the new emerging power. Is somebody trying to crash? I know I asked you this last night, but is somebody trying to crash the U.S. economy?
Well, what you have is an attempt to reduce the power of national governments and enhance the power of a transnational corporate elite. So the power is shifting over to transnational corporations, and they're diminishing the power of nation states, and they're doing this in a number of different ways. If you look at what's happening, you have corporations taking over many functions that the government previously handled. Prisons, for example, a prime example. Prisons used to be the function of a government entity, and now you have these private corporations that are taking over the running of the prisons, and of course it's in their interest to create more crime and more prisoners, because that means a bigger market for them and more profit for them. And it's the opposite of what we need to be doing. You know, there are certain functions that need to be public functions.
Yeah, and
Good point.
I forget what I was going to say.
Well, I mean, it's a broken system, and we're working on more
That's
prison.
what I'm getting at. Is that
and-
really those are the in the short
Yeah.
run, those guys might be making more money, but in the long run,
Yeah.
the economy as a whole is rewarding the wrong things. It's
Yeah,
rewarding
exactly.
the wrong behavior.
Exactly.
And if you think about it for a minute, if GDP growth is the be-all and the end-all of conventional economics, it's not only the goods that are produced that add to GDP, it's also the bads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, when you have a hurricane and massive destruction, the rebuilding that's required adds to the GDP. Not only that, but it wipes out a lot of the properties that might have been held free and clear, and now in order for the rebuilding to go on, people have to go to the banks and go into debt in order to rebuild. So it's another way of expanding the debt and concentrating power and wealth in ever fewer hands. But if you think about it for a minute, what would be the effect of world peace on the global economy? What would be the effect of a cure for cancer on the global economy?
Might not be good for business.
Well, and also, and what's the effect of happy people? Happy people generally don't need as much. They don't need
Yeah,
to
they
buy
stop
to
buying
fulfill-
stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I say look at Bhutan. That's where I'm gonna move one day if they let me in. But you know, where
Well, even
happiness of
Bhutan,
people.
that has been undermined as shown
Yeah.
in the film last night.
Oh, I haven't
You
seen
know,
it
when
yet.
when money
It's okay, I
comes
got the
in,
film at home. You can
Awesome.
borrow it from me.
Thank you.
when money comes in and advertising comes in, the whole picture changes. It's corrosive to the social fabric that made people happy to begin with.
Yeah. So what's our next step? Because I haven't read your book. What's next?
Next step is to read my book.
Do you have it on audio? I like the
Well,
multitask.
that's a perfect segue.
There's one book right there, The End of Money, The Future of Civilization. And I bought the other one last night, Tom, the Money
Yeah, that's
book.
money, understanding and creating alternatives to legal tender.
Yeah.
So that's specifically what that book is focused on, is historic and current examples of alternatives to legal tender and outlining procedures on how to do that. This book gets into that to some extent and provides prescriptions for both businesses and governments, primarily local governments, as well as individual and community activists.
I think one of the things that's interesting, I've read that book, and I mean, I'm not very good with numbers at all, so I had to read it a couple times, Tom, over and over. But it was such a fantastic read. I would put this in the top 10 books that I've ever read in my life.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm right up there. And one thing that I felt was so cool was you did the whole central bank evolution. I had no idea how the whole central banking came to be, and I think we've talked a little bit about that on some of the shows, but I think we should get into that because a lot of people don't know
It's
how
true.
it came to be, and you really bring it to light in that book.
The
Well,
sad thing is, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
a lot of people don't believe it even if they're informed in one way or another. So how do we make people also take it seriously and further educate?
Well, what I do is I try to present the facts, and my book is well documented. You know, I don't pull these things out of the air. I've done considerable research in writing these books, and so you can go back to the sources that I cite and verify that what I'm saying in there is factual. And the history of money and banking is really the history of the world. You really don't understand history until you start studying the history of money and banking, because that's where the power is.
Absolutely. So we take your advice. That means you're going to get to retire. If we can set
I've
everything straight.
supposedly retired a long time ago,
Yeah.
but I'm working harder now
Yeah.
than I ever did.
Yeah, you don't retire if you do what you love to do. You're
Right.
just living your life.
Which is what everyone should be doing. So
Right.
if we can shift things, people could be focusing on what they love to do.
Well, that's just it. I mean, people, everybody's running around,
Yep.
scrambling like crazy just to get enough money to pay the bills at
Yep.
the end of the month.
Right.
And it's driving people crazy, and it's kind
is.
of
Yep.
tearing the fabric of
breaking.
civilization apart.
The pressures are are tearing apart society.
Yeah.
And even those people who I feel think they do what they love doing, if money was no object, they would probably be doing something completely different. So we still find what we sort of
Yeah.
love within the whole context
Well,
of we need money.
And there's
Yeah.
so many things that we could be doing that are of value that aren't valued in the present system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, being caught up in the consumerist rat race is a major part of the problem, and you know, we have a lot of choices about that. There's a lot of stuff that we buy that we don't really need. In my own life, I've tried to downsize my possessions, especially since I like to travel and I like to spend a lot of time abroad. I don't maintain a residence. I have a storage locker where I keep the things that I think I need to keep.
Right.
It's mostly papers and books and virtually no furniture. And I think, pretty impervious to advertising. Somehow I've managed to build up this resistance so I don't feel the impulse to buy whenever I see something on TV.
Okay, so
Let's talk about. Can we talk about the seminars?
Absolutely.
And get
Yeah.
back to. I can say the dates. Okay, so we're doing one workshop tomorrow. It's at the Novotel Hotel. It's the first of two workshops, and we're very pleased to have Michael Contardi of the Salt Spring Island Currency joining us via Skype. And there's also the gentleman from the barter.
Yeah,
No.
well, he can't make it, but his associate from London, he said, might still be there.
Okay.
Anyway, I wanted to say something more about Salt Spring Island.
Sure.
The Salt Spring Island Dollar Project is about 8 years old now, I think. And they basically followed the same model as Toronto Dollar, selling it for cash and redeeming it under certain circumstances back into cash. They're in a little different position. A lot of people have taken the Salt Spring dollars away as souvenirs because they're a major tourist destination, and so they don't have to worry about it ever being redeemed. So it's been a fundraiser for local charities, but they're not satisfied that it's as powerful a model as it could be. So they're also looking at how to enhance the power of their currency project. And that's the reason why I wanted Mike Contardi to be part of this seminar tomorrow. But I didn't describe this Sunday seminar. That will be more focused on the general economic development of local communities. So I'll try to outline a general approach to community development in that.
That's great.
Yeah, and I'll just list the locations again. So Saturday, it's 3 to 5, Novotel building. It's all on the website. If you go to the Mint Film Festival, all the information's there. You can even register on Facebook and save $5 off the ticket price. So it's www.mintff.org. So Saturday, 3 to 5, Novotel building, downtown. All the directions are there. And also Sunday from 1:30 to 3:30, and that's in the ING Direct building just near Shooter Street and Yonge.
okay, great. And just one final thing, Tom, I'd like to ask you about, because, man, if you watch TV at all, you are not getting any of this information.
No.
You're just hearing about, what the government's doing to support the big
Yeah.
banks, the big corporations,
Now
and
we
all that
need
sort
to
of
do
thing.
it.
Well, there are some channels that you can get on the internet, like RT, Max Kaiser. He's very good. He has a lot of guests on that sort of get at the root of these things. He doesn't quite have an angle on the solutions yet, but he's getting people who can describe the problem.
Right.
But when you see all this and you see that increasingly every day in the regular economy, we're rewarding even more of the wrong things with more money. And at some point, if you keep doing that, the system's going to crash
Yeah.
at some point. I really don't understand, it's probably just my own naivety, but why the politicians, why the people in the media are not more critical of what's happening, or aren't more interested in bringing some of this alternative thinking to bear on the problem. And if one is just immersed in that mainstream media environment, they're not really getting any sense that there is even a discussion about this stuff. So my question to you, living in Tucson, traveling the world, being an American, are you hopeful that there's enough human spirit, entrepreneurial spirit, alternative spirit to get this stuff working?
Yeah, I definitely am optimistic. I see evidence of a lot of things going on under the radar, so to speak, that don't make the nightly news. And Paul Hawken wrote about those in his latest book, Blessed Unrest. He highlighted the fact that there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of groups and organizations around the world that are working on positive approaches to our problems. So I think that's something that we have to take heart with and get on board with the program. I use the analogy of the metamorphosis from the caterpillar into the butterfly as being applicable to what's going on in our society, in our civilization today. And we need to identify with the butterfly and not with the caterpillar, and find our place in the butterfly, the new wave, so to speak, the new economy, the new society.
Okay.
It's almost, if you think of the human race as a whole, it's almost like our own immune system rising up to save us from ourselves, basically.
Well, let's hope so.
I think more people are up for it, but it's one of those things we individually need to make noise, but we need to act collectively to make a difference.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
We're so used to acting in isolation and taking care of our own household that we've forgotten how to cooperate and collaborate
Right.
and work together to do the things that need to be done.
And that's the nature of how we truly are, but the way the system is, it has allowed us to be isolated where you don't even need to talk to your neighbor anymore
Right.
because we have everything
It
for
creates
ourselves.
that.
Exactly. So we need to somehow bring our communities back together and work together.
We've lost a sense of that interdependence.
Exactly.
We depend on the mega institutions, which are increasingly failing
Yeah.
us.
And we need to be reminded this is not a weakness. It's not a weakness to depend on others and have your family and friends and support system. But we
Right.
live in a system where it's like you need to be independent, do your own thing, or else it's considered a weakness. So that whole mentality needs to go back to the nature of how nature works.
Cooperation is a strength. Yeah. for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so people can participate by signing up at the mintff.org website.
That's right.
And of course, people can check out torontodollar.com.
Absolutely.
And Tom, you've got a couple of websites you might want to
Beyondmoney.net. That's my active website. And I have an archival site called reinventingmoney.com. That's reinventingmoney.com.
And I guess people can get their hands on the book, not just the
At
one
the-
book, but the books at
Seminars.
the seminars this
Yep, they're on
weekend.
sale at the seminars this weekend.
Okay, and I assume these are available in bookstores as well?
They're also available on Amazon.com or through my publisher, Chelsea Green. Some bookstores carry it, or you might ask them to order it for you.
Okay,
Great.
great. All right.
We have
Tom,
80
thanks.
copies of them at the Mint Film Festival, so they can call us. We can
Call the
distribute.
Toronto Dollar. Just get in touch with Glenn. He will get one in your
We'll
hands.
take care of it.
Okay.
We got lots of books.
All right. Thank you,
Thank you
Tom.
for coming.
And thanks,
You're welcome.
Glenn. And we're going to have a busy weekend. So let's take a little break. We're going to come back with Mike Woodbridge, director of There Goes the Bride, as Liquid Lunch continues. It's Friday. We'll be right back.
Light years away, dark days ahead, diving into the unknown, crawling out of bed, holding out my hand, holding up my head, the things I didn't know